Hello friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. We begin our video with a story about the most awful customer ever. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. I cannot effing stand customers who will complain and throw ridiculous tantrums to get what they want. I just had an altercation with some piece of crap a-hole who was well outside the exchange policy in my store, attempting to throw the biggest scene to customer service and my boss about how his product is defective and blah blah blah. I tried to fix his issue for him, but he was still unsatisfied with the result and the answer I gave, and proceeded to yell and physically damage merchandise in the store to have us exchange a product that was clearly not defective. He lies to my boss, saying how I promised I would switch out the product, which I never said at all, trying to make me out to be this huge bad guy. He compared me to Obama. Seriously, compared me to Obama. In all my years of customer service, I've never had a complaint that has ever escalated to such a ridiculous extent. A-hole says he's going to try to get me fired and all kinds of bullcrap. This whole matter only further escalates when he takes merchandise that's laying on my desk and proceeds to throw it on the floor. I then tell him I feel threatened and will call police if he doesn't control his temper. And my boss is going to side with the customer. This guy screamed and yelled for 2 GD hours before finally leaving just a few minutes ago. And I fixed his effing problem. I managed to completely resolve his effing problem, but the resolution we reached was evidently unsatisfactory to this raging mother effer. I've received letters of commendation, gifts, money, food, coffee, among other things for customers I've helped in the past, and this piece of crap tries to break all that apart from this one worthless incident. I might even lose my job because this guy apparently has ties with our local police department, being a retired sergeant. This is why I absolutely hate working retail, because you know the manager will cave and give the customer what he wants to save their own butt. And our second story. You need to think about whether you want to work here or not. In my late teens/early 20s, I worked at a bar and a restaurant that were next door to each other, owned by the same people, and attached through the kitchen. I took shifts at both. They were located in a pretty sketchy area of my city. The restaurant was pretty cheap diner/pizza place that catered to the neighborhood, and some of the customers could be pretty sketchy and some were cheap AF. There was one couple in particular that I couldn't stand. I called them Sonny and Cher, as they comically had similarities to their namesakes. They were the worst, always ordered the special, demanded all of my attention, wanted endless refills, emptied the sugar, salt, and pepper shakers into plastic baggies. You get the picture. All while pretending that we were great pals. I know full well that they were going to leave me their standard tip of 1 nickel. Happened every time. The boss paid us under the table. At the end of the week, I'd write down the hours I worked that week, multiply it by my hourly wage, pay myself from the till, and leave a slip of paper with my calculations in the till. The boss decided to start closing the restaurant an hour earlier during the week. Obviously, people that had been used to the old hours would come in right at closing. This had caused me to stay later than my posted shift. After a few weeks, my boss noticed that I was paying myself after closing and asked why. I explained that I was having to stay past the closing time when I still had customers. He wasn't happy with my reason and told me in no uncertain terms was I to pay myself after closing time. No problem, but I don't work for free. So from then on, when people would come in towards the end of my shift, I would ask them what they planned on ordering. If there was time for it to be prepared and eaten, I would serve them. If not, I politely explained that we're closing soon and I couldn't accommodate them. My boss caught wind of this. He was not happy. He came into the restaurant during a really busy lunch shift and told me he needed to talk to me in the bar next door right now. He followed behind me through the kitchen, screaming at me in Greek the whole way. I don't speak Greek. When he got out of earshot of the restaurant, he switched to English and went up one side of me and down the other. Told me I'd better think about whether I wanted this job or not, then told me to get back to work and left the premises. I went back to a chaotic mess. I was pissed. It really didn't take me long to think about it, maybe a minute. I realized that I didn't want this job, so I paid myself what I was owed and left a note informing him of my decision. I gathered my belongings, I told the cook I was quitting, and walked out the door with a spring in my step. I was full of adrenaline and had no idea what to do next. There was a bus approaching, so I decided to get on. Guess who was on the bus? Sonny and Cher. They were confused to see me as they knew I should still be on shift. I told them that I no longer worked there. They wanted to know why I'd quit. Well, they asked, so I launched into a very detailed explanation of why I hated it. They featured heavily in the story. They were so embarrassed that I think they got off before their stop. It was one of the most satisfying experiences I ever had. I heard later that the cook thought I was kidding, had run across the store for something and would be right back. Eventually, the customers went to the kitchen looking for me, and he figured it out. Being able to tell off Sonny and Cher was the icing on the cake. Great story. Well done. And our next story. You can absolutely wait to speak to the owner. This is my story from more than 20 years ago. I was attending grad school at the time to finish my doctoral degree, which I'm only mentioning as relevant because the customer made a crack about intelligence while working at my father's business, an auto salvage yard. Our yard was located in New Jersey, and this event occurred in August, so it was hot and very humid. I was generally very dirty when I was at work, with grease and grime all over my arms and clothes. If you washed your hands and arms every time they looked dirty, your skin would get just as dry and irritated, so with the exception of stopping to eat, I was absolutely filthy all day long. Our yard mostly dealt with shops and small independent mechanics who came in looking just as dirty as I was, so it was completely normal. Another point relevant to this story is this. I look absolutely nothing like my father. He's 5'8" and weighs at most 140 pounds. I'm 6'2", and back then I was powerlifting and weighed right around 220 pounds. So here's my story. A guy comes in to pick something he bought when I wasn't there that had to be taken out of a car. I don't even remember what it was now, but it was something fairly heavy, for him, not me, and dirty. If we had parts in our warehouse, they'd get scrubbed and cleaned by me before being labeled and cataloged, but parts coming right off a car just had the loose grime knocked off. So the guy comes in looking very out of place for our yard, wearing a button-down shirt, khakis, and dress shoes. He hands me his receipt, and I tell him I'll bring it out the side door. I walk out with his item on a hand truck, and the only vehicle I see parked is an Acura sedan. Very unlike the beat-up shop vehicles most of our customers drove. The guy's walking around the front of his car, talking on his phone, but the trunk is open, so I bring the hand truck inside and leave the item on the ground with a piece of cardboard to keep his trunk clean and go back inside. A few minutes later, the customer comes inside wanting to know what he's supposed to do with the part, to which I facetiously reply, "Install it, I imagine." He wants to know why the part is dirty. I reply, "It's used." He wants to know how he's supposed to get it home. I reply, "In your car." He wants to know why I didn't put the item in his trunk, and I point to the sign behind him, which admittedly is partially obscured by the open door, which says we're not responsible for loading parts due to liability for possible damage to the customer's vehicle. He turns around looking pissed and shouts, "What am I supposed to do now, genius?" Because I must be dumb if I'm dirty, right? There are now 2 other customers by the office, and I know them both well, so I tell them I'll be right back with them and walk around outside to the guy's car because I just want him gone. I throw a blanket over the rear bumper of his car, remind him that I'm not liable for damage, and I lift the piece up and gently put it on the cardboard in his car. To do this without damaging anything, I had to put one of my hands on the side of the trunk, and I left a huge greasy handprint, largely on purpose. While I'm loading, he's standing so close to me, supervising, that my arm bumps his arm and his sleeve gets dirty. The entire time this exchange has been going on, he's been on his phone, and he's now ranting into his phone about our interaction, and he calls me genius again, and I reply, "You came to a salvage yard to pick up a heavy, dirty, used part in dress clothes with a luxury car. Who's the genius?" At that point, he also noticed the grease on his car and his dirty sleeve, and he wants to know if the owner is here, and I tell him Bob is working out in the yard. He demands to speak with him, and I say fine. We walk back around to the office, and I point to Bob, who's way out in the yard on the forklift moving cars that are going to the crusher. This is time sensitive because the truck will come to pick them up and block the entire street while we load, so we have to be ready. He starts to walk into the yard, and I try to stop him and tell him it's too dangerous. He keeps walking, so I point out that our Doberman is trotting along behind the forklift. She was actually our dog from home and very friendly, but we brought her with us every day because we couldn't get home to let her out. He sees the dog and stops, and I tell the guy he has to wait until Bob is finished moving vehicles, and it'll be a while, which he says is fine because he's going to tell Bob exactly how his customers are being treated. Over the next 40 minutes, I walk past the guy multiple times helping customers, and each time I pass him, he mutters something about me being fired and me being sorry. Finally, the forklift shuts down and Bob stands up, and my new friend seems ecstatic, banging on the counter and telling me that Bob is done and he wants to speak to him immediately. I walk outside with my new friend right next to me, climb up onto a car's fender and wave my arms to get Bob's attention and scream, "Hey Dad, this guy wants to talk to you." And with that, my new buddy says, "F you," turns and walks out, hops in his car, and guns it up to the street. Dang. Make it mandatory that all employees call him Dad when a Karen-esque genius appears. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.